Have you ever wondered who is behind designing all these new talent trees, a brand new class? Who comes up with all this stuff? Well, we got to sit down and interview those people. We've got Berger and Brian Holinka here. I've been long-time fans of these, especially Brian, but he's always been pigeonholed into talking about PvP. It was amazing to meet him. He was happy to meet me. Finally, we get to talk about all kinds of stuff, especially the creation of the Evoker. These are the guys who literally have to design a class for World of Warcraft that works in the outdoor world, works in raids, works in PvP, and all the talent combinations that come alongside it, as well as balancing everything else. This is a super cool conversation, so I hope you enjoy it, guys. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going? Great to talk to you, Brian.
Yeah.
Graham as well, but it's been a while to be here. So we wanted to do this like a discussion and stuff and talk about things.
Cool.
So I think we should kick off with the Evoker because it is the big project you guys have got. And you were talking before we even sat down. It's like a new thing for you guys to do, although you touched Demon Hunter, right?
Yeah, you know, we don't do classes in World of Warcraft very often, every couple expansions maybe. And so every time we go to make one, it's sort of what's new that we can do here, what's going to feel different, be exciting, but also still feel like World of Warcraft. And going to the Dragon Isles, it was, okay, we have to make you be able to play a dragon. But like, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then even...
With giant cod pieces, right? That was the important piece we needed.
Yeah, key. But even, you know, beyond that, it's, okay, do we do a race? Do we just make a playable race? And you look like a dragon, that's awesome. But we wanted to do a lot more than that. We wanted to make you feel like a dragon, not just look like one. Could have given you, okay, you get fire breath and a tail swipe, those are your racials, and you're good to go. But it's like, what if we let you do all the things you see Alexstrasza and Nozdormu doing? Wouldn't that be awesome? But then figuring out kind of, what's the path to get there, you know?
What's the coolest spell you think you've made, like for you guys internally? And why is it Soar?
Soar's definitely up there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's cheating, right? Dragon riding is super cool. They get the glory on that one. Combat-wise, I think it's Deep Breath. Like
It is. It's so signature, that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was the thing. I think when it's the whole process started, like Graham got together with all the artists, the programmers, everybody was going to be involved with it, and they just started talking about like, what are dragons? Like, what are Warcraft dragons? What are the ideas that come to mind? And just kind of I don't think you did like a word cloud or anything, but
I mean, kind of. We held a whole bunch of brainstorming sessions with people on the team, people from within the company, and just said, yeah, what's awesome about dragons? And took as many notes as I possibly could, right? Typing as fast as I could. And then went back and kind of collated all of it and said, what was common between all these different groups of people? What really stood out? And what are we excited to build?
Yeah.
Was there anything that was on the list and you're like, God, that's cool, but we just can't get it in there?
I think there was things that were maybe non-combat, right? Like about dragons, right? Like, you know, they're hoarders, or, you know, like they have treasure troves or things. But then we have stuff that like we really wanted to focus on that was unique to WoW, like the magic of dragons in World of Warcraft. Maybe you don't see, you know, the type of magic a World of Warcraft dragon has in like Lord of the Rings, right? They're just, you know, he's a big physical beast and he breathes
exactly
fire.
Be smile walking around.
Exactly, like they're different, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit of capitalizing on that, and I think the physical nature of dragons as giant beasts, like we couldn't have a dragon, you know, that's 5 times the size of a Tauren, you know, going through the raid, sitting in the melee pile.
I wish we could, though.
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to walk through doors, so, you know, it's kind of...
When you see the gnomes stuck in, like, black morass and they can't walk because the water's too deep, things like that really just give some character to it. It is fun. Like, if you had like a dragon cooldown where you do turn into Deathwing for just a flash.
Just a moment,
just an odd moment to get in there, but you must be really proud of it. Like, as soon as I pressed Soar in the alpha, I was like, okay, you kind of got me.
That first moment when you launch off is just... oh, okay, this is different. And for me, it's like viewing the world, seeing the environment in a totally different way, rather than just, that's pretty. Now it's, okay, how do I not run into that?
And then crash into a tree. I literally hit the floor straight away. I was like, oh, I get this. Nope.
No.
Nosedive straight in. That is going to be a thing day one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think, and I said this to Graham after a recent playtest, I was like, I think that is just like the one thing that, you know, so much of Evoker is great, but when you do that, you're like, this is just changes WoW, right? Like it's just, I didn't even imagine we'd be able to do this in WoW. It's a very, very cool new moment.
Honestly, I think you know what gave me the big difference with the Evoker? Like the gameplay is great. I love the healer. The time mechanic is very clever. It really is. Like, and healers kind of get a rough stick sometimes because you guys have come up with some of the most creative healers in MMOs. Like the Mistweaver itself, the way that plays is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sometimes underutilized, which is a real shame because it's so unique. And then the DPS, the first build wasn't super great because it was like very Ruby, very arcane. Played like a mage a little bit, and you've done some good work on that now. Then I moved over to the healer and I was like, okay, there's some real creativity here. And I'm kind of curious. Like you said, you don't make a lot of new classes. Demon Hunter was the last one. Comes in, I-beam, everybody sees I-beam for the first time, and that tick rate of the damage, which I'm sure was a big discussion internally with how quickly that would happen, because it looks cool every time you press it. What's the vision you had before it even got to paper? Like, you're saying it's going to be a dragon, but I think as designers, and combat designers yourself, you kind of already pictured the spell before the conversation started.
Yeah, for both specializations, for the class as a whole, it was really trying to hit key themes, right? Fire Breath and the Empower mechanic was, I think, maybe the second spell we built, or first spell, one of the two. And just trying to get that feeling of, okay, we know this is such an iconic moment for dragons that you're breathing in and preparing that anticipation before they breathe fire is just as important as the breathing fire. How do we deliver that? And so we tried a lot of stuff, had versions of Fire Breath where the cone got bigger or
That would be
longer.
great. Thank you. Because the tank's moved. It's not my fault.
We had versions where it did simply more damage the longer you charged it up, but trying to get in on that. This is a choice the player's making about when to release it, add that depth of gameplay of, okay, you're waiting for someone to come around the pillar and you get to hold it or release it before they hide. That journey was really cool, and trying to, hit on themes like that. The time magic is a perfect one, where we're like, okay, we have these 5 kind of main flights. They're all cool. We haven't done time magic. Mages have alter time, and time warp has time in the name, but we haven't really explored that space. And there's a lot of technical challenges with time magic. So figuring out, okay, what can we do? What might we be able to do and we should explore, and what's totally ridiculous. A fun one we tried for a long time was time stop. You want that idea of, I'm going to drop a bubble and just stop everything going on, which sounds really cool.
Yeah, but how did it work in practice?
It's a multiplayer game, and when your friends are sitting there unable to do anything, they're kind of not stoked about it.
Yeah.
But eventually that turned into their PvP talent, where
you actually had the idea of CCing everybody around you.
Yeah, why not?
Oh my God.
That's the fun part of early design, right? No one outside the company has seen it. We get to explore these wild ideas and see what feels like. What's the kernel there that's awesome? Okay, that idea of stopping time is really cool. I don't want to be able to freeze everyone because that's not fun for anyone else.
Yeah.
In PvP though, okay, that's a really cool offensive or defensive CC ability that feels different and is thematically so separate from other things we've had.
Well, you guys are like the combat maesters, right, of this place. And that's, like, as we were just talking before we started, you're always known for PvP, but the reality is, and you come from such an FPS background as well, looking into what you did. So there's a lot here to go through. I can't fathom how PvP, and because for the years players have asked, please separate these out, do something else. And you came up with PvP talents, you did every other different thing in the world. But you have to consider so many more aspects of the game than I think any individual really considers. So how do you even go through that? Generally speaking, it's because people will go, yeah, but in PvP this spell is broken, or in PvE this spell is useless. But you have to, and now you've got a talent tree that's never been seen before, like with Evoker, to do it all again. I need to know how you guys do that, because it's such a big issue.
And then I think there's the part of it, we have a bunch of tools now, we have PvP malts, and we can make the spell do different things in PvP versus PvE. And part of that is restraint. We have to use some restraint there because you want a cohesive game experience, right?
Yeah.
You want to have a character and you're questing with it, and then you go into a dungeon with your friends and it plays a certain way, and then you go in PvP and it plays a similar way. And so on one hand, there's always calls for can we make this cooldown greater in PvP, or can we adjust the duration of spells? And so there are certain things that we're willing to do when we go from one kind of content form to another, and then there's things we're not, right? Like cooldowns, in my opinion, is off limits. There's a rhythm to the game.
Yep.
How frequently I press these buttons, and messing with that, I think, really messes with the feel of the game. So we don't do that. But durations, when we're talking about, certain durations are 60 seconds, like polymorph.
Yep.
Nobody wants to be polymorphed for 60 seconds, so it's okay to do 8. And then also just the magnitude of a spell, like the amount of damage it does or the amount of healing it does. There's 5% variance on every spell. There are damage modifiers. I don't know, like the best players in the world know those numbers.
No, I don't know. I used to be there. I'm not there anymore.
Most players don't. So if we feel like we got to knock something down 25% for PvP, I don't think people are going to notice that much, right? But we can overdo it, right?
It keeps the use case the same, right? You think about polymorph the same way in PvE versus PvP, whereas, I don't know, if it did something totally different, if it was a half a second CC and a silence and that was it, that's suddenly a different spell than turn them into a sheep and watch them wander around. So I think that's kind of our guideline, is make sure you think about it in the same way as a player, you use it in kind of the same circumstances, even if the numbers are slightly different.
But really, it's hard. I mean, you know, like
it sounds incredibly hard.
You know, you have raids, and we have, you know, LFR, normal, heroic, mythic. So you have like 4 difficulties there. You have mythic plus. You have players who are, you know, struggling to get a 5 keystone, and then you have people pushing 20, 25. You know, and they all kind of play the game different, and it is challenging. You know, I don't think anyone would expect differently. I think for us, it's just, you know, the spectrum of how much, you know, difference there is between the classes. There has to be a minimum that every class and every spec can do, right? In terms of, you bring this amount of damage, you bring this amount of healing, so you bring this amount of utility, so people are happy that you're there. You're playing with your friends, you really want to be a ferocious cat, or you want to be an arcane mage, like that's the fantasy that really grips you. We want to make sure that, you know, we hit a floor and you can be there. But then also, we want to have these kind of situations where you excel. And so we just got to make sure that the situation you excel isn't like way over here.
Yeah, we call them hero moments. You know, the old demonology warlocks breaking into Manoros Fury and just decimating the entire room.
Right.
Feels good every single time, you know? And then the other class is like, well, I pop wings.
Right. Right. I remember a time back, I think it might have been a Mist era, where I was leveling a tank. And I think this was in the Vengeance era. Yeah. And I was doing all the DPS in my leveling dungeons. No, because I said it was like, I'm the tank, I'm doing double damage of everyone else. It's like
I was anti-vengeance as well.
Yeah, I'm like I'm the hero of the story, and what are these people even here for, right? Yeah. And it was important that the DPS are the best at doing the DPS, that they have a role that they fulfill, and just, you know, if your tank is the only one that matters. So I didn't think that was a great era, and obviously we've gone away from that.
I'm so glad you said that, because the amount of times people are like, just bring vengeance back. I'm like, dude, it was so stupid.
Right. Yeah, it was.
You shouldn't be popping for one person.
Yeah.
And, you know.
And they're taking. Then they started taking extra mechanics to just boost vengeance. Right. They were using shield walls to take things that should kill them. So their vengeance number goes up. And then you saw the damage meters of like Raden's world first. Right. The tank is like 3 times everybody else.
Yeah.
It made no sense. Yeah. It was stupid.
And we love tanks, and we want more players to play tanks. So we want it to be fun, but at the same time, you know, they have a lot of responsibility. Tanks do. You know, a lot of responsibility in the modern game. And so we often have to deal with 2 situations. One where they have all this responsibility. It can be pretty intimidating to play at times. But also you have really good tank players who they want the game, you know, they want more interesting, more complicated situations. They want to kind of go deep. So how do we make it more accessible so that we can encourage more players to show up and be tanks, but also those people who are very long, you know, long time players.
It's like you don't want to double down on, say, somebody who's new to Mythic Plus and the tank is responsible. I mean, I'm guilty of it. As when I go in as DPS, I seemingly just wash my brain of all the knowledge I've ever been there before. The tank will take care of it. But then sticking a complex class on top of it is like, this is just intimidating now, right? It's not something we want to deal with. But one thing I wanted to ask you about homogenization then. So we've been investigating a lot of MMOs recently, and I don't know why you guys do it to yourselves. I really don't. But I look at every other MMO and they're like, no, we're not going anywhere near what Blizzard does. We are keeping, you know, FF14s, no talent trees. You go over to this side, it's like everything is just gear, your classes don't do anything. You guys go, well, what if we had 300 legendary items, 50 conduits each, and all this? And is that something you guys are directly involved in, or do sometimes things arrive and you're like, we kind of need to build this into the class somehow, in some regard, or do you fire back sometimes like, dude, what are you doing to us? We're trying to make the basic, and now you're stacking all this stuff on top.
It very much is a collaborative effort. Like, as the combat team, the combat in every part of the game is sort of our purview, and so things like conduits or soulbinds, covenant abilities, all of that is very much something that we're heavily involved in, either creating ourselves or working with the team that's working on it. And yeah, in a sense, we do it to ourselves, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. We're like really excited. Look at all these options we can give players, all the different ways they can build their character and make themselves stand out from their peers or their friends. So it's a balancing act of how cool is it, how much work is it going to be, and also how complex are we making things, right? Adding more conduits. If we'd had twice as many conduits, I don't know that the game would be twice as good per se, right? Because at some point it's just information overload, and you want things to be approachable and for people to be able to get into those systems, understand them, and be able to interact with them and not go, that's too much, I'm out.
Yep.
Right?
Which I think is what happened to a few people, is like, okay, so I need a soulbind, which one do I need? How do you guys feel about the Minmax lifestyle? Because you guys, we'll get to the talent trees in a sec, but it launched yesterday, and already every post is out there is like, not sure what to do, copy and paste this link, and in it goes. And for a lot of people, they were going, okay. And that's it. They'll just bypass the whole system. So, with all this work you guys put into it, I assume you predicted this was going to happen.
Yeah, I think, we're in a world, right, where we have, very popular influencers playing the game, sharing their knowledge.
I'm innocent. I didn't do it.
But, people sharing their information and about the game, their knowledge of the game. And, modern games are about communities, right? They're about online communities. And people want to, talk about these things, right? Talk about these choices. And it's also an opportunity for somebody to buck the trend and be like, well, actually, everybody's playing this way, and I've tried it that way, and oh wow, I think it's really cool. Yeah. And I've been watching the PvP scene for a long time, and that will happen in the tournaments a lot of times, where someone will try something different, and it'll be surprising, right? And I think that'll happen with these talent trees, where there will be situations where people say on this fight, really actually play this build and it works out better. And those are the things I think we want. But there's going to be a system, like a group of players who are just like, I've set my talent tree, I'm walking away from it. Like, that's what we expect.
I found that a lot with my guides, because I did guides for like 7 years for one. And what I discovered is that so many of my viewers, they just get the build on day one and they never respec.
Right.
And it made me so sad. It's like, but your class plays in all sorts of fresh and interesting ways, even if it's swapping Mass Entangle to Typhoon or whatever it is for Mythic Plus. Like, that's cool. You've changed what you're doing and doing stuff. And then finding out, if you got, statistically, do you find that? Is a lot of people just like, and I'm done. And then move on. I think Ian said he thought that a lot of people found talent choices a hassle in terms of they want to collect pets and things. They're not interested in the combat style whatsoever. And then we also saw wars about raid leaders forcing people to respec to AoE on the AoE boss.
Yeah.
And is that something you're very aware of? Because you've done pre-made talents, right?
Yep, we did the starter builds, which I've seen the reaction to that has been really positive.
Oh, excellent.
A lot of people are like, thank goodness for the starter build, right? And all my buttons were still there. So that's gone over really well, surprisingly well. It's one of those, features. I think we were talking about it, while we were developing it, and we were like, yeah, we should do this. And then you're like, it's hit the live, game, and we're like, oh, thank God.
For those players who are not interested, it's like, I'm done. Like, although you didn't give Prot Warriors Spell Reflect.
On default.
I was furious. I went because we were just testing the new dungeon out. I was like, I'll just go with the standard build and see what's it. My fingers were doing it.
right. In the button and it wasn't there.
My fingers like, this is Spell Reflect. Go. This is not working.
And that'll evolve over time. I think the more times we hear stories like that, we'll take that back and we can make adjustmts to it. But
I'm not requesting it. Last time I did that, DK's got nerfed, like I must say.
Oh, the feedback's been noted and it's already on its way. Sorry,
Emails going.
I think, but with adding more choice to the system, I think we've just gone from an era, basically from Mists of Pandaria to now, where the classes were heavily curated, right? Like you were making 7 choices, 7 talent rows. That was it. Those were your choices. Everything else, like we handed to you, made it very easy on ourselves to be easy to balance the game.
For Blizzard.
And now we've put more hands and we've really empowered players to do these things. And there's a downside to that it's harder to balance, and sure, more meta builds will emerge. But I think that freedom to be empowered to really define your character, it's worth something. It's worth a lot. And even if I go back, just the leveling experience, I think we all have a lot of high-end max level players. But if you go through the leveling experience and now you're getting a talent point versus just getting a spell, like it's a pretty fundamental difference that you really feel.
And people just like getting a little bit of progress that way, right? There's something more momentous about the level number going up than getting anything. And that's when we were looking into both your histories, which are like extensive. You joined during Mr. Pandaria.
Yeah.
Just as talent trees were removed.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, for you, did you join and go, what? Because both of you strike me as so into player customization. I think that's come through already. It's like reading through your backstory, your work history. It's like you two seem very focused that player choice is everything, which was kind of the opposite in Shadowlands. My fight with Ian was like, you're taking away player choice. Why are you doing that? And I'm wondering, it was like for you specifically, was this something you came in and were like, no, let's not go this way for a while, and now it's coming back with the talent tree choices? It's like,
no, I mean, certainly when I joined, I was just, when I joined in Miss Pandaria, I was like, oh, Blizzard, I was a young designer, and like, okay, yeah, this all makes sense, like only meaningful choices. That was what we went, and I think that made sense at the time, right? Because the game was getting kind of, the game was on its like 5th expansion or whatever. It just felt like they kept building more and more and more on top and it was getting complicated, and they felt like, let's just make these classes straightforward. Let's make the choices meaningful. I mean, some people don't remember that those initial talent rows, they were class-wide.
Yes.
So it wasn't that, like, it was very interesting because when I first arrived here, it was literally the release week of Mr. Pandaria is when I started. And there was meeting every week for like the first couple of months was just about talents and talent balance and like trying to make these talent rows work for the different classes. So if I was beating any drum at that time, it was like, oh, we should make these things spec specific, right?
Yeah.
Which we eventually did because I felt like we had certain situations we just needed to accommodate. But no, initially I was like, okay, this is what Blizzard is doing, and I'm here to learn. But I think coming out of Shadowlands, I think with the release of Classic and us all playing Classic again, leveling, going through like earning spell ranks, getting talent points, that's kind of what kind of triggered us to say, it's really kind of more fun to get a talent point than it is to just kind of get a rank upgrade. And then thinking just, hey, we've had this talent system for a long time. We really need to kind of flip the table in a way and really shake things up for players. Because if you've been playing your class since Mr. Pandaria, if we aren't changing all of the talents every expansion, it feels pretty similar.
There's something so special about a new expansion, unfortunately, but now should be coming back, is that every new expansion, you were looking forward to what your new talent was. Because I still remember when Bladestorm came into the game.
Right.
It was a bit before your time, I suppose, but that was a hell of a day. It's like, you turn into a blade of death and spin and crunch. I can't wait. And every warrior, I think, that day was 3ing an arena, all Bladestorming one person to see what would happen. Yeah. And then for a while, that was lost. And we actually went the opposite way. It's like, you lost a lot of stuff. You came out of Legion into BFA, and it's like, where's all my toys gone?
It's
like,
sure.
And is that something that when the talent trees decided to come back, you're like, we can't keep going this way? And Classic would have had an influence on that. Like, this is just fun. Yeah,
I think when we added this system, we certainly weren't like, let's add the talent trees for this expansion and then we'll figure it out later. Like, we want, if we're going to make this system, we want to grow for, this is our system going forward, and we can add more talent points every time we level up, right? We want to add 10 talent points the expansion after this one. We want to add new abilities, and I think players like the class-specific stuff a lot, and so that's kind of part of it, and that's kind of where we're looking forward. But it's funny because having the 2 trees is actually really helpful too.
Because it's a tough choice sometimes. Yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, but I really want that. I've spent a good 10-15 minutes looking at one talent point. Where's it gonna go?
Oh, yeah.
Where's it gonna go? And it's something I really hope people embrace. But you're right. What was that decision made early? It's like, okay, there's some foundational stuff that CC utility.
Yeah.
And then let's just make a tree of fun stuff that tails your damage.
We tried a lot of different things when we first started kind of working on the talent project. Again, we had a talent summit with the combat.
When did the word come down? We're swapping back. We're going back.
Let's see, I think...
You remember better than I would.
Yeah, about like shortly after Shadowlands launch, you know.
So that early, so a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Because we start thinking about the next expansion shortly after launching.
Ian said like the next one's
Yeah,
doing
and
stuff.
so pretty much after that, and we go ahead. I think you could hear the story of the Talent Summit, right?
We had like a 2 or 3 day kind of summit where the whole combat team and some other designers got together and just, we said, okay, you can make any talent system you want. Like no restrictions, don't worry about tech, just what would you do? And we came up with some really wild stuff, which was really cool. And then obviously kind of went, okay, what's reasonable to do? What fits? What kind of hits all of the goals we've laid out, not just 1 or 2 of them? But yeah, tried some wild stuff.
Did somebody go full Path of Exile? It's like, okay, I picture.
We might have had 1 or 2 very large grids with lots of connections. But then the idea of having class abilities and specialization abilities separated, we realized gave us a lot of power to sort of define the types of choices players are making. I think for me, from Conduits and Soulbinds, having those finesse nodes where it was, you're making utility choice here, and that's it. You don't have to worry about how much damage it gives you or what throughput, just like, what's the cool kind of trick you want your character to be able to do? Seeing that, oh, if we do the class side and have it be mostly utility choices and kind of with the gates, really empowers players to make those choices and not feel like they're giving up throughput, which I think is really, really important and a huge advantage of the system we came up with eventually.
No, for sure. Like it's come out really well, and it's got to be much easier now to balance. I assume. I got to assume Shadowlands was a headache. I mean, you got it really close actually. Like towards the end, it was really, really close. But it must have been a headache to start with. It felt like it.
It was a lot. I mean, I think every expansion is though in different ways. But you know, because we're making class updates for the expansion, and then whatever system we're layering on top, be it Soulbinds and Conduits or Talents, it's just a lot of new. So
yeah, I'm not saying that the combinatorics are any less, right? With the talent trees, like, well, a lot of the things we put in the talent trees we took from the conduits or the legendaries or the set bonuses or previous artifact abilities. Like we often talk about it being like a greatest hits type of talent tree. And so I don't think it's gotten easier for us. I think that there's still the challenge exists, but there's a lot more choice in the player's hands if we're, you know, off on something, right?
Well, the way I looked at it, maybe I'm way off base, but I'm reading from what I see, is that you kind of kept it so you could rebuild your Shadowlands character for the most part. And I think for the average player, that's a really nice thing. So you've got the separate loadouts, but if you just overhauled it as like, hey, this Frost Mage now does all these wacky things that you've never seen before, the average player is going to be like, right, I don't know what this is.
Yes.
So it feels like this is almost like a gentle swap.
Yeah.
It's a whole new system. Yeah. But you can basically just rebuild what you already have, and you should understand if you're a Death Knight, you know what Death Coil does, you know what it's going to do, and you know generally, there are some new talents in there, obviously, but most of the part is going to be the same. Do you feel like once this settles, next expansion, we can get a little silly maybe?
Yeah, I think managing disruption to players as they return is important, right? Everybody logged in yesterday, or and it was kind of like, do we want everybody to log in and be like, I don't know how to play my class, I'm logging off, farewell, right? We want people to log in and be like, oh, this is still my class, and now let me open the talent tree and maybe I can change things. Like, that's what we wanted. That was important. So you're absolutely right. But at the same time, we wanted them to then be able to unclick and say, I'm gonna do something crazy. You know, like I always tell this story, but in TBC, like I was one of those Shakadins.
Oh, they were so brutal.
Yes.
It was horrible. I can't believe you made me remember that.
They weren't good, but it was just this thing I wanted to do.
They were great.
I never raided on them, but I quested on it. I leveled like that because I thought it was fun. I don't really think so. No, I think if I would go in the PvP, I would ret and everything, but or play holy. But you know, it was just that like I felt like I could do something cool and define. And even if it's suboptimal, okay. And I think there's going to be situations like that now where people are going to make, I don't want to say silly builds, but they're going to make builds that are not optimal. And
I'm excited for a silliness.
Yeah,
there were moments a lot in WoW that have been lost with the sort of harsher, stringent controls.
Right.
Festamite would be one where people discovered they could just roll those super powerful dots forever and ever.
Right.
Warlocks were doing it with the crazy mop trinkets where they were just, you might remember, they were, was it called Soul Swap? And they were just keeping it going all the time. And this gives the opportunity for that as well. Actually, this kind of causes this effect to happen.
Yeah.
And I am a little curious about some of the more technical stuff, like snapshotting. It was a big part of the game. But is it just too high end? You know, those kind of things where it's like, this is too niche. This is like you need an add-on or something like that to make, you know, the old combustion, you'd probably remember it, where it's like you needed an add-on to track all those ignites and stuff. And where do you draw the line with that?
Yeah, it's a lot to manage, right? We have to manage the fact that if there is any build or play style that involves lots of add-ons, the best players in the world are going to do that. They are going to be able to do it reliably because they're very skilled. And so that's going to be the bar now. Like that's what they are.
Or everyone else feels trash because they watch those players and they're like, my mage doesn't do that.
And so it's a bit of like, you know, we want those opportunities, but maybe we just have to bring their impact down a little bit. I mean, that's the balancing act, right? Is like you want player expression, player skill to be meaningful, but at the same time, the best are going to be way over here, and they're going to be able to do it reliably. So when we make designs, like, you know, if the designer's saying, well, this will be really hard to do, you know, kind of say, no, it won't. Like, they're going to do it. If like it is possible, they'll be able to do it, and they'll be able to do it reliably. And yeah, that, I think when you say now we're balancing against this bar way over here, that's a problem for a player who cannot do that or hasn't researched the add-ons. And so, yeah, it's a little unfortunate, but at times, yeah, we have to manage it because it's a multiplayer game. It's if it was a single player game and you could break the game, like, you know, my son is playing Skyrim on the Switch right now, and he's telling me every day the way he's breaking the game, and that's great.
I can one-shot the dragon easy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it goes back to like FF7, but it's like one-shotting the bosses.
But in a multiplayer game, you can't do that because everybody else is having the same experience, and you know you want their contributions to be valuable as well. So it's maybe not the right place for World of Warcraft to let you break the game. We have to kind of rein it in.
Does it feel restrictive? There was an instance that I recall, and Ian mentioned it, is Alter Time, the original Alter Time.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful spell, and so much fun. If you got it right, really, really good. And then, I think in an interview, Ian said, yeah, but we discovered like 2% of mages ever even pressed the button. And so we got rid of it. And I remember reading that going, my heart, no. Yeah. And occasionally they do come out with really cool spells, like Dark Simulacrum, very cool, you know, synergy with the druids, where they were stealing spells. And I wonder how many ideas you're like, that would be awesome, but it's just not going to play. Or even when you've taken them out, like how many times you've run into that and you're just like, I wish we could just go a bit further.
Yeah, I mean, I think even recently, like with Ravenous Fury for Balanced Druids, like we ran into it, where it's like, you know, you put a downside on this and you hope that means...
That was a brutal downside.
Yeah, it was. but at the same point, like I said, they could pull it off, right? And they could pull it off reliably, and so now we've moved the measuring stick way off to the side. So I think it is a limitation of this is the type of game we're making, right? Where it's a social game, it's a multiplayer game, and that means we have to do a good job balancing and maybe game-breaking things. They're not the right it's not the right situation for those.
How close are you tracking this stuff? I'm just curious, like in general, like, you know, but when he actually put out a number, I can't remember what it was, and I wouldn't want to put words in his mouth. But he was like, just nobody really pressed it. So why is it on our bars, right? Yeah. And, you know, that's the situation. Is that something you monitor pretty closely, or just to kind of take a snapshot every 6 months or so?
Oh, gotcha. We have a lot of telemetry.
Yeah, we have a lot of data about what choices players are making with the talent trees, kind of what spells they're using, you know, success rates in Mythic Plus and raids and things like that. So we have a lot of data we can dig into. But there's, you know, we like to be informed by the data, but not make all our decisions entirely based on it, right? I don't want to look at a spell and go, 1% of players cast it, cut it, right? You got to ask, why are only 1% of players casting it? What's the reason behind it?
It's just an education issue. Maybe.
Exactly, yeah. And I think snapshotting is a great example. That mechanic, I don't think we would consider an intuitive one, right? It's very mechanical. You have to understand kind of the inner workings of the math behind the game, and that's really cool for certain types of players, but for the broader audience, isn't something you can really learn from playing, and that's really important to us, right? We want all our classes to be approachable in some way. Be like, you can show up, play this fantasy that you're super excited about, and perform at kind of a minimum level. Something like Snapshotting, I don't think necessarily hits those goals if it's, you know, not something we're teaching players very well either.
That's cool. One last thing before I get shouted at. So coming back to homogenization, so like I said, we've been investigating so many MMOs and we're talking to those companies, and they kind of give up. Let's make it pretty similar. So it makes the damage profiles incredibly simple. Like the animation might be different, but for the most part it's not. And you guys have worked really hard to not do that? And I assume that's down to your team. It's like, how much of a core value internally is like, no, we're not going to make the classes similar, even if it does lead to crazy hero moments, something broken. And is that something that Dragonflight is changing a lot about the philosophy of the game, but that feels like something you're going to stick with?
It is important. I think we don't want homogenization. I think like we sometimes look on past versions of the game where everybody had everything, for sure. I think when you look at, kind of going to what other games, if you look at classic World of Warcraft, like not all the classes had a very complicated rotation, right? Like maybe
Enhancement Shaman, what do they have, Shock?
Yeah.
That was it.
And I think because the value of the game was go on an adventure, right? And go on an adventure with your friends, and the power of your character is really determined by like the loot you have, and not really how well you do a rotation. But I think players want to have a cool rotation, like they want to have skill expression.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is why our game plays the way it does. We try to make each rotation different. When we find ourselves going to the same kind of mechanics, we question that. Builder Spender's a great example.
Yeah, you've upped it a lot now, because you've got Focus, you've now got the Orbs with the Drakti, I forget the name. Essence,
yes,
there you go.
right.
All these different resources are coming in. The rune system itself with the DK.
Yep.
And that's a great way of differentiating, because you haven't seen Rage used again for a long time, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's just been Bears and Warriors forever. And is that one of the ways you're like, we're just going back to this mana?
Yes, we talk about that. We try to make it different, right? Like this class offers something different. And I think, some players then gravitate to one class or another, and maybe they like this class and they try another one and they don't like it because they don't like the resource system. And I think that's fine, right? I think that's good. I think it gives a lot of variety. It provides a replayability that if you, and I found this in PvP all the time. Like if I played a whole season as like Assassination Rogue, and I was just like, I want to do something different, I would just go play a Red Paladin, and then, or maybe that's a bad example. Maybe I would play a Fire Mage, right?
No, it's like I was saying as Demon Hunter, it's not going to be my main,
right?
But I love playing that for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Right? And it gives you that new taste, that new flavor that you need.
And it just feels a whole new experience. And I think that's the value of not being homogenizing.
No, I mean, I put it in the notes that you guys have seen. It's like the combat in WoW is the strongest point, and always has been. And no matter where else he plays better than a lot of single player games. And I'm sure you recognize that, right? I mean, I'm not sure what the netcode guys are doing, but it's good.
Magic.
It is pretty good. But thank you for your time, guys.
Yeah, no problem, Mike. This was great.
Yeah, awesome. It was okay for you guys.
Yeah,
that was
that's awesome.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the long trip.
Yes.